So me and Z ran into another instance where essentially we're made to feel like a difficult customer for wanting people to actually do their job or provide whatever service. I've complained about this before in another video where a help chat person tried to gaslight us that there was no cable on a product that both says and shows wired on the info page because they couldn't find the answer to our question for how long said cable was. And at that point, it starts to feel less like a willingness problem and more like a comprehension issue. But the effect on us is the same, regardless of why the worker can't or won't do whatever it is. They want the interaction to be over. As the customer, to push any further or even advocate for yourself sometimes, you assume a role of being difficult. Everyone else just deals with the standard of service, so why are you being so persistent? I understand and do not inherently judge people for quiet quitting their jobs. People should not have to give more of themselves than a soulless corporation deserves. Although, I am endlessly bothered by people who can't even be arsed to squirt condiments on a burger at fast food places correctly because they're already doing it. It takes no extra effort to do the task right. There's a scale of acceptability, you know? So I'm not coming at this from the position of a boomer saying no one wants to work these days. In a lot of cases now, jobs are not setting their workers up to be able to provide proper service. It's a problem with the system and not the individual. And that's kind of what happened to us recently. So we kind of live in the boonies. More than the distance from town, the driveway on our property is steep and long, so in the winter it becomes pretty hazardous, actually. Delivery drivers, rightfully, don't want to go down it and risk getting stuck. And there's no problem with that at all. That's something that we have to compensate for because our driveway sucks. For some seemingly unrelated reason, though, Purolator decided our place is outside of their delivery range. It didn't used to be. Z got packages from them within like the month of when that suddenly changed. Then one package just kind of never showed up. Z had been tracking it and had an expected delivery date, but then a week went by and it still somehow hadn't arrived. So he reached out to Purolator, and that's when he found out they'd limited their range, and they said it was up to him to make arrangements to come pick up the package from their designated location, even though he'd received no communication that any action on his part was required or that it was there. The package could have just stayed in limbo if Z hadn't taken the initiative. And that's inconvenient and not very responsive of them, but there was no real harm done in that case. Our story begins with the next package that we had to order through Purolator, though. It was a Dell monitor to replace mine. Its capacitor popped while still under warranty, and Dell has their own way of doing things that you cannot argue with. We had to do it Dell's way, and Dell wanted to do it through Purolator, unfortunately. And even though Purolator has seemingly marked our address as being out of range, they still took the order without any acknowledgement of that. There was no little warning saying extra action would be required, or any way to preemptively schedule a different location for pickup from the start, rather than wait for it to get close enough and then have someone mark it as undeliverable. It's not a cheap item that we're shipping, so we would like to get our hands on it sooner than later to minimize risk of damage or theft, but because it's Dell, there is a time limit. They expect you to receive the new monitor and send the old one back to them within like 2 days. We literally could not wait for Purolator to take their time to notify us. So Z kept track of the package, and as soon as it was at the Purolator location in the next town over where we had to pick up the last one, we went to just go get it. Z walks in with his ID for verification and asks the lady at the service desk if he can pick up his package. She puts his name in the computer, and it doesn't come up. Despite its location having been scanned and updated to that location online, I guess the location itself hadn't processed it yet. So the woman asks him, "Did we call you to tell you your package was here to pick up?" And that kind of puts Z in a position of fault. Like, if he'd just waited to let things process, they wouldn't be standing there with empty hands. But like I said, we couldn't actually wait on due process of Purolator because of the added Dell time limit. And then it was also extremely awkward for Z to then have to explain that no, they didn't call him this time, but they didn't call him the last time his package was marked undeliverable either. He just ended up wasting a week before he was then told that he was expected to take additional action after reaching out himself. Waiting for the Purolator location to do things is essentially asking us, the customer, to patiently wait an indeterminable amount of time and lose our window to ship the broken monitor back, incurring extra fees. That Purolator track record is not the responsibility or a reflection of this individual employee that he's dealing with, but it is generally seen as rude to bring up that Purolator has previously not done its job well and that we very much do need to take agency into our own hands. And to her credit, though she was a little thrown off by having someone come early to pick up a package that they didn't even have on record at that location yet, she did humor Z. There are plenty of people out there in the world who would not have seen it as their responsibility to even try and help if the information wasn't already available to them, and told us to go drive home empty-handed, having wasted an hour and a half and navigating barely serviceable winter roads and expect us to just come back again later. So she asks him for the tracking number then. If Z is so sure that it's there, she could use that to go to the back and find it and process it so that he can then leave. Z pulls up the email that Dell sent him, and wouldn't you know it, it doesn't have the tracking number in it. Nowhere does. They'd sent him a hyperlink to take him to another third-party website that tracks the package location, and that hyperlink plugged the tracking number in for him, so all he ever sees is a progress bar. Nowhere in any of their email correspondence did they directly give him access to a tracking number that he could give to the Purolator lady to plug in. So at that point, Z is feeling a little like a difficult customer. 2 other people got processed and left with their packages while Z was sorting himself out. And the only way that he actually managed to get the tracking number was because his Chrome history had saved the URL, because for some fucking reason, the tracking page itself didn't display the actual tracking number either, just the progress status, but the number was in the URL itself. Like, what kind of bullshit is that? 99% of other customers probably wouldn't have figured that out and had to just leave, because what else could they do? Why wouldn't Dell provide that plainly? Why is the world designed so you have to jump through hoops just to get access to reasonable service? Eventually, Z did give her the package number and provided his ID when she brought it out, because it was, in fact, there. He wasn't making demands that couldn't be met. It genuinely didn't make sense that he be expected to just go home and wait for a call that likely would never come and forfeit the Dell conditions. And she was actually very nice about it, apologized to him for the difficulties and delays, and that's great. But so often in situations like this, customers really are expected to have no autonomy, and to demand anything more than what you've been given makes them an outlier, seen as slightly more difficult just because they have a unique circumstance that actually requires some active form of adjustment to provide the services that are expected. Like, how often have you ordered food from somewhere and asked for an alteration for it to just straight up get ignored? And then if you complain, or even asked for it to be remade, you'd be the jerk for not just sucking it up rather than it be on the worker for having done it incorrectly. Or like a video that I made complaining, I think about a year ago, when Z had a package held at the border and the agent assigned to his case would not provide information as to what they needed to complete the transfer, didn't read or respond to Z's communications, and literally kept her phone off the hook during work hours so he couldn't get in contact. But from her perspective, considering that she felt entitled enough to do all of that and put in less than the bare minimum, it probably seemed like Z was being the difficult one by demanding accountability. Especially since, because of that negligence, he had to get other people in her office involved. And the worst, as we all know, is internet service providers, who act like they're doing you a favor if they ever actually even show up on the day they were scheduled to come. Like, it's perfectly normal for people to be able to take a whole week off of work waiting around because they say they may show up any day at any time between 9 to 5. And it just feels like awful right now, trying to navigate and get the services that you actually need. Either the workers are actually resentful of having to do their job, or the system of their job is so unoptimized it's hard for them to provide service even if they want to. And no matter which it is, it sucks that we're made to feel bad about expecting any better. Like, let's say that it had been either of Z's or my parents trying to perform the exact same interaction to pick up a Dell monitor from Purelator. They would have gotten there, the worker would not have a record of the package being there, and there would be nothing either they or the worker could do about that, even knowing that it was there. They would not have access to the tracking site on their phone. They would have to go all the way home and open their emails to find there is no tracking number at all. They would have to wait for a call that canonically wouldn't come, and if they didn't take the initiative to reach out eventually on their own, they'd literally just never get the package, which isn't even accounting for Dell's time restrictions and penalties that they'd incur through no fault of their own. Shit just doesn't fucking work anymore, and people like us are made to feel bad for being assertive. Like, people's prolonged complacency to accept diminishing standards isn't how we ended up here in the first place. And maybe it is a bit of a neurodivergent thing that if we go into a situation like this, we're not trying to be difficult, we're just genuinely trying to come up with a solution, while other people expect that when a service worker tells them no, that's that, and are willing to accept it's out of their hands. But I don't want it to be out of my hands. I want to complete the action that I came here to do and should by all means be provided. I don't see why sometimes it's even seen as confrontational to ask questions, like we shouldn't want to receive the service we were promised. And yeah, sometimes it is uncomfortable as a worker to be met with questions that they don't have a good answer for, probably because they don't have the autonomy to change things either. But it's not rude to ask, why can't you do that for me? What can we do to make this work? Why isn't my customer experience being prioritized? Because sometimes, like with Dell's lack of forethought to provide necessary shipping information, and Purelator's sudden unwillingness to deliver while still accepting parcels under the context of delivery, it seems like companies are intentionally making fulfillment harder. Z is much better at advocating for himself against illogical scenarios, and his willingness to stick out an awkward situation in pursuit of a solution is the only reason that I got my monitor situation sorted. I'm very appreciative. I just wish that things weren't so hard to get done in the first place. Or that I was raised in a society that demanding accountability should ever make me feel like I'm being bad. Let me know in the comments if you ever felt like that, feel like that sometimes. Provide anecdotes. I will be reading them for catharsis and validation. Okay, bye.